So good morning. My name is Deb McCaffrey. I'm from Frontier Security. We're here to talk about user security within the Frontier system. Within Frontier, we do offer user security. This is in three parts. We begin with the command groups that identify the commands people can do, what they can do, see, or use in the system. With user groups, we bring together the users in groups, giving them permission to command groups, and then additional permissions such as policies and routing groups or domains. And then to the users themselves, bringing in what commands they can or cannot do, adding them to the user group, and then a few individual type permissions such as maybe a login schedule or a special screen that they go up to. These command groups also, or user groups, can be assigned to workstations. So if you have a workstation that is in operations, you may give that workstation the operations or a guard or security command group, and that way that workstation can only do those functions. These user groups, command groups, and user permissions also translate all the way over to the web client. The reason we really like using the user security is that you're protecting your organization a little bit more with the users themselves. You're giving them permissions for everything they need to do their job, but restricting it from areas where they don't need to be. I can't tell you how many stories we've heard with people coming along and, security officers get bored at 3 o'clock in the morning and they decide to go into some of the more back of the house things and change schedules or access groups and deciding to figure out what access groups do what and wind up moving access, and then it's a scramble at 8 o'clock in the morning because nobody can figure out what was done. We can prevent some of that by setting up user groups and command groups appropriately and only giving people permissions enough to do their job effectively. To begin to do this, the first thing that we do is under Edit, and I am currently working in R4 SP2. R4 SP3 did come out a few weeks ago, but right now the system I'm working on is SP2. So under Edit, in System Settings, we want to go down to User Security. We're going to build this a little bit backwards. We want to first start out about command groups. Now, in a default system, we are giving you 6 different defaults for command groups, such as administrator. This is wide open. It has all the commands, and you can see that when you go down in each object type, you select each object type and you are going to find checkboxes in every single object type. When we're looking at the other ones, we have badging operators and supervisors, guard operators, guard supervisors, and view only. It means they can only view things, they can't do it. Through command groups, we then go and define under each object type one by one. It is a very tedious process. However, you're going through on this window, can they view it, update it, add, delete? What are you allowing, those permissions you're allowing that user to do? And as you go through more and more, it does become more finite as we move through the process. If you have something such as R3 or before, you're going to just have a badging window. When you're in R4 above, you are going to have credentials and people. So it's a little bit different, but not majorly so. But through credentials, we can decide, can you update, add, delete, mass edits, create multiples. So all the little flags that you could possibly have where you can do things. And then when we're looking at people, again, allowing for adds, deletes, changes, what can they do? Can they reprint things? So each one of these is done. When you're looking, if you're looking at R3 and before, we had all those tabs across the top. on the people side, you'd be able to pick which tabs they could see even. And that's the same reflected here, tab permissions, and defining which tabs they have access to. And then it can drill further all the way down into reports. Reports is another big section because, we think reports, either I give them permission to use it or I don't. Well, actually, we can go a little bit deeper. We have reports. Are we able to add, delete, export? Well, sometimes you just want one person to have use of 2 or 3 reports, but not all of them. If we do reports, view by report, you can do by groups, or you can hand pick one by one which this group sees and which this group can do. And you'll see when we log back in as a different user that has less permissions, I can't go anywhere. I can't even see what's behind there, what we've hidden from them. So they don't even know it's not there. If you are setting up your own command group, I put up this badge intern, you have to go through each object type and define what they can or cannot do. There is one gotcha though, and this is a common problem, is that under window types, you have to define what windows they can see. If you create your own and you leave this blank, then you can't log in. That person can't even get into the system because it doesn't know which window to open to. So this is where we really want to make sure this window type is very, very important. So once we build all of these command groups, we can go into user groups. Again, it's taking that new name, assigning the command group that you built, defining the setup window. Like I was saying before, you start adding your policies, such as a login policy, which graphics policy they have. You can put in their own unauthorized passwords. This is that desktop action. So maybe they're not an operator. They work in HR, that they don't want the pop-ups. Maybe they're the head of security. They don't want the alarm cue popping up, but they want the little window, that little pop-up bubble that says you have an alarm. They may want to see that. So that's kind of where some of the groups are working from. If you have alarm routing groups, this is where you decide. You may have a security office over in the west building, and it's just a kiosk, and you have 2 people that typically work over there. That user group, you could build a west building user group, security user group, and just have that alarm routing from that group. And so that's the only alarm queue that they're going to see. Once we build the user groups, then we're into the user, and this is defining the user and assigning them to the group. And of course it trickles all the way down to the command groups. One of the very interesting tools that we have, and I'm going to pick on my buddy Forrest here, is this relations. So we have Forrest, who is part of the badge operators, and there's some question of what he can and cannot do. Through relations, instead of digging all the way, I want to go to user group. He's part of that badge operators group. Well, okay, fine. He gets the default and everything else. I want to dig further. I want to go down to command groups, and I'm looking at this badge operator command groups, and now I can see exactly what functions. So I can keep tracing it back without having to go find it if you have lists and lists of these. Before I mentioned about having those user groups, and we can tie, and remember, the user groups are tied to the command groups. We also have the command groups by name. So we talked about having that workstation in the security office defined as a certain command group. And that me, as a full administrator, even if I went into that security office and logged into that workstation, it would still lock it down to only going for that guard command group. It would only allow me to do the things on that machine. And how you accomplish that is through Edit, System Settings, and Workstations. If you're working on R2 and before, you simply edit and go to Workstations. And here you can see is that command group restrictions, and that's way it's restricting that workstation to those command groups. As you can see, I have full functions, I have all of the commands, I have everything. If I log out, and let's go back to my friendly forest here, I'm going to switch user. And log in. It's only going to bring me up to the windows that I've dedicated for this user. And it's just going to bring me up, and it brings me right to that people screen because he's a badge operator. If I click in here, I can't go anywhere else. I'm locked into just showing what I can use. So under my edit, I only have that people. We talked about having some of this through the web client as well. So for my web client, I'm just going to sign in as me first so you can see the full functionality. So we have the operations, systems, and reports down here. You're seeing everything. Everything is available. But if we're using user groups, even through the web client, and I'm going to sign in as somebody else, and now I've signed in as Barney, and Barney only is an operator. He can only see the operations. So it carries over all the way into the web client. Does anybody have questions about user security, how to set it up, the uses for it, the good, the bad, the ugly? Well, I want to thank you for attending today's tips and tricks. Again, we were talking about user security and how we can use it to protect your system when you have a large base of users in your organization. If you have any questions or comments, always visit us on the web at www.frontier-security.com. Thank you.